in this show, what we called Return to Former Splendor in the Sigmund Gallery of Canada in the temporary exhibition space. It's a focus on conservation that we do here at the ROM, specifically Paintings Conservation. And in our table cases, we have some really neat tools and materials and methods that we use in the conservation department. Of interest is one of our numerous Krieghoffs, one of the smaller ones, that we have done some micro sampling done on it to help us understand the composition of what makes up a painting. In the case of the painting that we have on display, we took the micro sample, which is no bigger than the end of a period at the end of a sentence, and I have the sample encased in resin here. We sent the sample off to CCI, the Canadian Conservation Institute, for analysis. They do a variety of microanalytical things like Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy and a variety of X-ray microanalysis as well. This is incredibly useful to help authenticate the work and actually place the work in the whole artist's oeuvre. Where did that painting come from? And when we have a lot of these micro-analytical techniques compiled on one artist, we can actually create a compendium of all their materials, techniques, as well as the paints that they use from the palettes, and we can place it exactly in a specific time frame. In the case of this Krieghoff, we knew it was a Krieghoff, but we want to help with the research and add to the study of this artist. We were able to determine that the red that he used was dry process cinnabar, also known as vermilion. And that was wonderful news. We knew then it wasn't a cadmium red, because if it was a cadmium red, we'd be in trouble with our attribution, because cadmium red wasn't invented until 21 years after Krieghoff died. In the whole concept of figuring out about pigments, we do a lot of work with pigments themselves. We liked to research not only historical pigments, but also contemporary ones that tend to be more stable, light-fast, work better in solution when we're doing any type of in-painting. And we've highlighted 3 historical pigments here in this case. We have ultramarine, carmine, and Indian yellow. Now the Indian yellow we have is actually synthetic Indian yellow, because the authentic Indian yellow is no longer around. We do have it on display as it's used as a watercolor medium in the Islamic miniature from the 17th century. The one that's made today is very similar in tone and chroma, but much more stable than the original Indian yellow, and it's called nickel azo yellow. However, real Indian yellow was perhaps one of the most controversial and mythical pigments. Originating out of the 15th century in India, it was found to be created by feeding cows exclusively mango leaves and just a little bit of water. This would mean they'd only live about 2 years, and those 2 years would not be a good time. It would be very excruciatingly painful, and then they'd subsequently die. Their urine, which was bright, bright yellow, would be collected, precipitated, and formed into balls, pigment balls, which would then be traded west towards to Europe to be used not only as a glazing medium in oil color, but also primarily as a watercolor pigment. So in 1908, in perhaps one of the first international animal rights cases, this process of making this pigment was found to be exceptionally cruel, and it was outlawed internationally. You cannot purchase authentic Indian yellow. Perhaps a few older pigment merchants might be able to sell you the original ones, but it would be highly suspect, and you'd have to wonder where it actually came from.